Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to the small poem, An Evening Lull. This is a hard poem to read. I have students that will in fact report this one maybe depresses them more than almost any poem in Leaves of Grass. It's palpably lugubrious and sad and mournful. It is poem 56 of the 58 of Stanza 70. So clearly we're coming to the first of what we call the first annex. Now our assumption is that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Talks with Walt, and that you've been with us from the very beginning up to and including a set of introductory comments to Stanza 70, and then we just finished with Preceding Song's Farewell. Now our Nortons will give us some important information. First of all, at the conclusion of this poem and then right before Old Age Lampant Peaks, Whitman had a little note. The two songs on this page are eked out, that's an interesting verb, let's hold on to that for later, during an afternoon, June 1880, in my 70th year, at a critical spell of illness. Of course, no reader, and probably no human being at any time, will ever have such phases of emotional and solemn action as these involved to me. I feel in them an end and close of all. Now, our Nortons will tell us that Trouble actually comments on the proofreading of this poem, first published in November, Bowes, 1888. And then, of course, again, Whitman's note includes the poem that is preceding. And so as we look now at Evening Lull, there will be a certain kind of really sad feeling as we read this poem. It is a hard poem to read. It is a painful poem to read. You'll remember Lull from Song of Myself 5, only the lull I like, only now it's an interesting use of the word. And Whitman will begin to do this. If you guys pay attention, he'll often use words that were used in one way earlier in Leaves of Grass, now maybe in a little different way. It's a little four-line offering. After a week of physical anguish, you'll remember his use of anguish in Song of Joys, for example. Unrest and pain and feverish heat. Toward the ending day, a calm and lull comes on. 3 hours of peace and soothing rest of brain. Now, what makes this poem, I mean, technically, it's not a sad poem, right? Because it's like, whew, a little break. Finally got a little break. And we're all familiar with that feeling of, I finally got a break. What's disturbing, of course, is that what this poem implies about all the rest of his time and his life and the language that he uses. Notice it's a week of physical anguish. Again, as we said, the way he uses anguish in Song of Joys and then the way he uses it here, it's remarkable. Notice he'll call it unrest and pain. This, in some ways, is a different type of theodicy, as we've commented on it. That is to say, why must there be pain and suffering? Here it is the pain and unrest, right? But toward the ending day, and we're familiar with his use of this type of language already in Leaves of Grass, a calm. And this use of the word calm we're as well familiar with, aren't we? And lull, as we said, go back to Song of Myself 5 to see his use of that word, comes on. And again, his use of the word come right from the very beginning, the very first word of the introductory word of Leaves of Grass. And then he says it 3 hours, as if this is all I get after a week, 7 days of this intense pain. Of course, after a stroke, he began to break down, as we've said, and it's just horrific pain. 3 hours, notice, of peace and soothing rest of brain. And it's interesting, it's brain and not mind, but we probably know that he means mind. In other words, his brain continues to be active, but only in these brief spells, and then he all of a sudden can get a little bit of a repast, and then it's like a little bit of peace, a little bit of soothing rest, because he wasn't sleeping very well near the end. He had always struggled with headaches, but now all of a sudden it's just going to be intense, and his brain can't ever seem to calm, and he just gets a few hours, a few minutes of hours of it, and then that's all. You have the sense that that kind of experience is happening less and less for him as he ages. At 2a, obviously, aging can often be anguish. That's the word he uses. At 2b, I just want to notice the personal tone here. This is a strange poem to publish, and yet I think Whitman wanted us as readers, and that's why we're calling this Talks with Walt. He wanted to share all of the experiences of his life. At 3a, I can't help but think of Tolstoy's Ilyich, at the end of the death of Ivan Ilyich. We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net about this amazing novella, published in 1886. But ironically, capturing some of the same. Now obviously there for Elitch it's cancer, here for Whitman something different, but still the angst that is a part of intense pain and intense suffering. And maybe we could say at 3a that there's some as well, notice the use of the word wretched, there's some identification with the pain and suffering of Christ on the cross. Certainly some of that identification is happening in some of these later poems. He'll even finish, of course, the section with the reference to supper, and it's, I understood, to be the Last Supper. So we could certainly, the passion of Christ is possibly being solicited here. Finally, at 3b, to try and wrap your brain around this, obviously this is kind of scary to think, oh, if I live long enough, this is what's coming, yuck. But for you already, what is the worst anguish that you've ever felt and you've been able to somehow escape with a little bit of calm? Does that resonate at all for you? Thank you.